In answer to the king, this is how Odysseus, the man of many resources, began his tale. King Alcinous, most illustrious of all your people, it is indeed a lovely thing to hear a bard such as this, with a voice like the voice of the gods. I myself feel that there is nothing more delightful than when the festive mood reigns in the hearts of all the people, and the banqueters listen to a minstrel from their seats in the hall, while the tables before them are laden with bread and meat, and a steward carries round the wine he has drawn from the bowl, and fills their cups. This, to my way of thinking, is perfection. However, your heart has prompted you to ask me about my troubles, and that intensified my grief. Well, where shall I begin? Where end my tale? For the list of woes which the gods in heaven have sent me is a long one. I shall start by giving you my name. I wish you all to know it, so that in times to come, if I escape the evil day, I may always be your friend, though my home is far from here. I am Odysseus, Laertes' son. The whole world talks of my stratagems, and my fame has reached the heavens. My home is under the clear skies of Ithaca. Our landmark is Mount Narrator, with its quivering leaves. Other islands are clustered round it, Dulichium and Same, and wooded Zakynthus. But Ithaca, the farthest out to sea, lies slanting to the west, whereas the others face the dawn and the rising sun. It is a rough land, but nurtures fine men, and I, for one, know of no sweeter sight for a man's eyes than his own country. The divine Calypso was certainly for keeping me in her cavern home, because she yearned for me to be her husband, with the same object Circe, the Aeaean witch, detained me in her palace, but never for a moment did they win my heart. So true it is that a man's fatherland and his parents are what he holds sweetest. Even though he is settled far away from his people in some rich home in foreign lands. However, let me tell you of the disastrous voyage Zeus inflicted on me when I started back from Troy. The same wind that wafted me from Ilium brought me to Ismarus, the city of the Cicones. I sacked this place and destroyed its menfolk. The women and the vast plunder that we took from the town we divided so that no one, as far as I could help it, should go short of his proper share. And then I said we must escape with all possible speed, but my fools of men refused. There was plenty of wine, plenty of livestock, and they kept on drinking and butchering sheep and shambling crooked-horned cattle by the shore. Meanwhile, the Cicones went and raised a cry for help among the other Cicones, their inland neighbours, who are both more numerous and better men, trained in fighting from the chariot and on foot as well, when the occasion requires. At dawn they were on us, thick as the leaves and flowers in spring, and disaster, sent by Zeus to make us suffer, overtook my doomed companions and me. They fought a pitched battle by the swift ships and exchanged volleys of bronze spears, right through the early morning, and while the blessed light of day grew stronger, we held our ground and kept their greater force at bay. But when the sun began to drop, towards the time when the ploughman unyokes his ox, the Cicones gained the upper hand and broke the Achaean ranks. 6 of my strong grieved comrades from each ship were killed. The rest of us eluded our fate and got away alive. We sailed from Ismarus with heavy hearts, grieving for the loss of our dear companions, though rejoicing at our own escape. And I would not let the curved ships sail before each of our poor comrades who had fallen in action against the Cicones had been 3 times saluted with a ritual call. Zeus, who marshals the clouds, now sent my fleet a terrible gale from the north. He covered land and sea alike with a canopy of cloud. Darkness swept down on us from the sky, Our ships pitched and plunged in the wind, and the force of the gusts tore their sails to shreds and tatters. With the fear of death upon us, we lowered them on the decks and rowed the bare ships to the land with all our might. We rested on land for 2 days and 2 nights on end, with exhaustion and anxiety gnawing at our hearts. But on the 3rd morning, which bright-haired dawn had ushered in, we stepped the masts, hauled up the white sails, and took our places in the ship. The wind and the helmsman kept our vessels straight. In fact, I should have reached my own land safe and sound, had not the swell, the current, and the north wind combined, as I was rounding Malea, to drive me off my course and send me drifting past Cythera. For 9 days I was chased by those accursed winds across the teeming seas. But on the 10th we reached the country of the Lotus-Eaters, a race that eat the flowery lotus fruit. We disembarked to draw water, and my crews quickly had a meal by the ships. When we had eaten and drunk, I sent some of my followers inland to find out what sort of human beings might be there, detailing 2 men for the duty, with a 3rd as herald. Off they went, and it was not long before they came upon the Lotus-Eaters. Now, these natives had no intention of killing my comrades. What they did was to give them some lotus to taste. Those who ate the honeyed fruit of the plant lost any wish to come back and bring us news. All they now wanted was to stay where they were with the Lotus-Eaters, to browse on the lotus, and to forget all thoughts of return. I had to use force to bring them back to the hollow ships, and they wept on the way, but once on board I tied them up and dragged them under the benches. I then commanded the rest of my loyal band to embark with all speed on their fast ships, for fear that others of them might eat the lotus and think no more of home. They came on board at once, took their places at the oars, and all together struck the white surf with their blades. So we left that country and sailed with heavy hearts, and we came to the land of the Cyclopses, a fierce, lawless people who never lift a hand to plant or plough, but just leave everything to the immortal gods. All the crops they require spring up unsown and untilled, wheat and barley and vines with generous clusters that swell with the rain from the heaven to yield wine. The Cyclopses have no assemblies for the making of laws, nor any established legal codes, but live in hollow caverns in the mountain heights, where each man is lawgiver to his own children and women, and nobody has the slightest interest in what his neighbours decide. Not very far from the harbour of the Cyclops' country, and not so near either, there lies a luxuriant island covered with woods, which is the home of innumerable goats. The goats are wild, for the footsteps of man never disturb them, nor do hunters visit the island, forcing their way through forests and ranging the mountain tops. Used neither for grazing nor for ploughing, it lies forever unsown and untilled, and this land where no man goes supports only bleating goats. The Cyclopses have nothing like our ships, with their crimson prows. They have no shipwrights to build, merchantmen that could give them the means of sailing across the sea to visit foreign towns and people, as other nations do. Such craftsmen would have turned the island into a fine colony for the Cyclops. It is by no means a poor country, but capable of yielding any crop in due season. Along the shore of the Grey Sea there are lush water meadows, where the grapes would never fail. There is land level enough for the plough, where they could count on cutting a tall standing crop at every harvest, because the subsoil is exceedingly rich. Also, it has a safe harbour, in which there is no need of moorings, no need to cast anchor or make fast with horses. All your crew need do is beach their ship and wait till the spirit moves them, and the right wind blows. Finally, at the head of the harbour there is a stream of fresh water, running out of a cave in a grove of poplar trees. This is where we came to land. Some god must have guided us through the murky night, for it was impossible to see ahead. The ships were in a thick fog, and not a gleam of light came through from the moon, which was obscured by clouds. Not a man among us caught sight of the island, nor did we even see the long breakers rolling up the coast, before our good ships ran aground. It was not till they were beached that we lowered sail. We then jumped out onto the shore, fell asleep where we were, and so waited for the blessed light of day. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, we were delighted with what we saw of the island, and set out to explore it. Presently the nymphs, those children of Zeus, set the mountain goats on the move to ensure my companions a meal. Directly we saw them, we fetched our curved bows and our long spears from the ships, separated into 3 parties, and began shooting at the goats. And in short time the god had sent us plenty of game. When it was shared out, 9 goats were allotted to each of the 12 ships under my command. But to me alone they made an allotment of 10. So the whole day long, till the sun set, we sat down to rich supplies of meat and mellow wine, since the ships had not yet run dry of our red vintage. There was still some in the holds, for when we took the sacred citadel of the Cicones, every member of the company had drawn off a generous supply in jars. There we sat, and as we looked across at the neighbouring land of the Cyclops, we could see the smoke from their fires and hear their voices and the bleating of their sheep and goats. The sun went down, night fell, and we lay down to sleep on the seashore. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, I assembled my company and spoke to them. "My good friends," I said, "for the time being stay here, while I go in my ship with my crew to find out what kind of men are over there, and whether they are aggressive savages with no sense of right and wrong, or hospitable and God-fearing people." Then I climbed into my ship and told my men to follow me and loose the hawser. They came on board at once, took their places at the oars, and all together struck the white surf with the blades. It was no great distance to the mainland. As we approached its nearest point, we made out a cave close to the sea with a high entrance overhung by laurels. Here large flocks of sheep and goats were penned at night, and round the mouth a yard had been built with a great wall of quarried stones, tall pines, and high-branched oaks. It was the den of a giant who pastured his flocks alone, a long way away from anyone else, and he had no truck with others of his kind, but lived aloof in his own lawless way. And what a formidable monster he was! He was quite unlike any man who eats bread, more like some wooded peak in the high hills standing out alone apart from the others. At this point I told the rest of my loyal companions to stay there on guard by the ship, but I myself picked out the 12 best men in the company and advanced. I took with me in a goatskin some dark and mellow wine, which had been given to me by Maron, son of Euanthes, the priest of Apollo, the tutelary god of Ismarus, because we had protected him and his child and wife out of respect for his office. He lived in a wooded grove sacred to Phoebus Apollo. This man had given me some fine presents, 7 talents of wrought gold, with a mixing bowl of solid silver, and he drew off for me a dozen jars of mellow, unmixed wine as well. Oh, it was a wonderful drink. It had been kept secret from all his serving men and maids, in fact from everyone in the house but himself, his good wife, and a housekeeper. To drink this red and honeyed vintage, he would pour 1 cupful of wine into 20 of water, and the bouquet that rose from the bowl was pure heaven. Those were occasions when abstinence could have no charms. Well, I filled a big goatskin with this wine, and also took some food in a bag with me, for I had an instant foreboding that we were going to find ourselves face to face with some barbarous being of colossal strength and ferocity, uncivilized and unprincipled. It took us very little time to reach the cave, but we did not find its owner at home. He was tending his fat sheep in the pastures. So we went inside and looked in amazement at everything. There were baskets. Wait, you broke into somebody's home, man. Come on. There were baskets laden with cheeses, and the folds were thronged with lambs and kids, each group, the spring ones, the summer ones, and the newborn ones, being separately penned. All his well-made vessels, the pails and bowls he used for milking, were swimming with whey. To start with, my men begged me to let them take away some of the cheeses, but that's stealing. Then come back, drive the kids and lambs quickly out of the pens down to the good ship. I mean, obviously they're not opposed to stealing. They sacked the city on the way there, and so set sail across the salt water. But though it would have been far better so, I was not to be persuaded. I wished to see the owner of the cave and had hopes of some friendly gifts from my host. But when he did appear, my men were not going to find him a very likeable character. We lit a fire, made an offering to the gods, helped ourselves to some of the cheeses. Oh, Jesus. And when we had eaten, we sat down in the cave to await his arrival. At last he came up, shepherding his flocks and carrying a huge bundle of dry wood to burn at supper time. With a great crash, he threw this down inside the cavern, giving us such a fright that we hastily retreated to an inner recess. Meanwhile, he drove some of his fat flock into the wider part of the cave. All the ones he was milking, the rams and he-goats, he left out of doors in the walled yard. He then picked up a huge stone, with which he closed the entrance. It was a mighty slab. 22 four-wheeled wagons could not shift such a massive stone from the entrance. Such was the monstrous size of the rock with which he closed the cave. Next he sat down to milk his ewes and his bleating goats, which he did methodically, putting her young to each mother as he finished. He then curdled half the white milk, collected the whey, stored it in wicker cheese baskets. The remainder he left standing in pails so that it would be handy at supper time when he wanted a drink. When he had efficiently finished all of his tasks, he relit the fire and spied us. "Strangers," he cried, "and who are you? Where do you come from over the watery ways? Is yours a trading venture, or are you cruising the main on chance, like roving pirates who risk their lives to ruin other people?" Our hearts sank. The booming voice and the very sight of the monster filled us with panic. Still, I managed to find words to answer him. "We are Achaeans," I said, "on our way back from Troy, driven astray by contrary winds across a vast expanse of sea. We're making our way home, but took the wrong way, the wrong route, as Zeus, I suppose, intended that we should. We are proud to say that we belong to the forces of Agamemnon, Atreus' son, who by sacking the great city of Ilium and destroying all its armies has made himself the most famous man in the world today. We find ourselves here as suppliants at your knees, in the hopes that you may give us hospitality, or even give us the kind of gifts that hosts customarily give their guests. Good sir, remember your duty to the gods. We are your suppliants. We are your suppliants, and Zeus is the champion of suppliants and guests. He is the god of guests. Guests are sacred to him, and he goes alongside them. That is what I said, and he answered me promptly out of his pitiless heart. Stranger, you must be a fool, or must have come from very far afield to order me to fear or reverence the gods. We Cyclopses care nothing for Zeus with his Aegis, nor for the rest of the blessed gods, since we are much stronger than they are. I would never spare you or your men for fear of incurring Zeus's enmity, unless I felt like it. But tell me where you moored your good ship when you came. Was it somewhere along the coast or nearby? I'd like to know." His words were designed to get the better of me, but he could not outwit someone with my knowledge of the world. I answered with plausible words. "As for my ship, it was wrecked by the earth-shaker Poseidon on the borders of your land. The wind had carried us on to a lee shore. He drove the ship up to a headland and hurled it on the rocks. But I and my friends here managed to escape with our lives." To this, the cruel brute made no reply. Instead, he jumped up and, reaching out towards my men, seized a couple and dashed their heads against the floor as though they had been puppies. Their brains ran out on the ground and soaked the earth. Limb by limb, he tore them to pieces to make his meal, which he devoured like a mountain lion, leaving nothing, neither entrails nor flesh, marrow nor bones, while we, weeping, lifted our hands to Zeus in horror at the ghastly sight. We felt completely helpless. When the Cyclops had filled his great belly with this meal of human flesh, which he washed down with unwatered milk, he stretched himself out for sleep among his flocks inside the cave. On first thoughts, I planned to summon my courage, draw my sharp sword from the scabbard at my side, creep up to him, feel for the right place with my hand, and stab him in the breast, where the liver is supported by the midriff. But on second thoughts I refrained, realizing that we would seal our own fate as well as his, because we would have found it impossible, with our unaided hands, to push aside the huge rock with which he had closed the great mouth of the cave. So with sighs and groans we waited for the blessed light of day. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, the Cyclops relit the fire, milked his splendid ewes and goats, all in their proper order, putting her young to each. Having efficiently completed all these tasks, he once more snatched up a couple of my men and prepared his meal. When he had eaten, he turned his plump flocks out of the cave, removing the great doorstone without an effort. But he replaced it once more, as though he were putting the lid on a quiver. Then, with frequent whistles, he drove his plump flocks off towards the mountain, and I was left with murder in my heart, scheming how to pay him out if only Athene would grant me my prayer. The best plan I could think of was this. Lying by the pen, the Cyclops had a huge staff of green olive wood, which he had cut to carry in his hand when it was seasoned. To us, it looked more like the mast of some black ship of 20 oars, a broad-bottomed merchantman, such as makes long sea voyages. That was the impression which its length and thickness made on us. Standing beside this piece of timber, I cut off a fathom's length, which I handed over to my men, and told them to smooth it down. When they had done this, I stood and sharpened it to a point. Then I hardened it in the fire, and finally I carefully hid it under the dung, of which there were great heaps scattered throughout the cave. I then told my company to cast lots for the dangerous task of helping me to lift the pole and twist it into the Cyclops' eye when he was sound asleep. The lot fell on the very men that I myself would have chosen, 4 of them, so that, counting myself, we made a party of 5. Evening came, and with it the Cyclops, shepherding his plump flocks, every one of which he herded into the broad cave, leaving none out in the walled yard, either because he suspected something or because a god had ordered him to. He lifted the great doorstone, set it in its place, and then sat down to milk his ewes and bleating goats, which he did methodically, giving each mother its young one in due course. When he had efficiently completed all of these tasks, He once more snatched 2 of us and prepared his supper. Then, with an olive wood bowl of my dark wine in my hands, I went up to him and said, "Here, Cyclops, have some wine to wash down that meal of human flesh, and find out for yourself what kind of vintage was stored away in our ship's hold. I brought it for you as an offering in the hope that you would take pity on me and help me on my homeward way. But your savagery is more than we can bear. Hard-hearted man, how can you expect ever to have a visitor again from the world of men? You have not behaved rightly." The Cyclops took the wine and drank it up, and the delicious drink gave him such exquisite pleasure that he asked me for another bowlful. "Give me more, please, and tell me your name here and now. I would like to make you a gift that will please you. We Cyclopses have wine of our own, made from the grapes that our rich soil and rains from Zeus produce. But this vintage of yours is a drop of the real nectar and ambrosia." So said the Cyclops, and I handed him another bowlful of the sparkling wine. 3 times I filled it for him, and 3 times the fool drained the bowl to the dregs. At last, when the wine had fuddled his wits, I addressed him with soothing words. "Cyclops," I said, "you ask me my name. I'll tell it to you, and in return give me the gift you promised me. My name is Nobody. That is what I am called by my mother and father and by all my friends." The Cyclops answered me from his cruel heart. "Of all his company, I will eat Nobody last, and the rest before him. That shall be your gift." He had hardly spoken before he toppled over and fell face upwards on the floor, where he lay with his great neck twisted to one side, and all compelling sleep overpowered him. In his drunken stupor, he vomited, and a stream of wine mixed with morsels of men's flesh poured from his throat. I went at once and thrust our pole deep under the ashes of the fire to make it hot. And meanwhile, gave a word of encouragement to all my men to make sure that no one would hang back through fear. When the fierce glow from the olive stake warned me that it was about to catch alight in the flames, green as it was, I withdrew it from the fire, and my men gathered round. A god now inspired them with tremendous courage. Seizing the olive pole, they drove its sharpened end into the Cyclops' eye, while I used my weight from above to twist it home, like a man boring a ship's timber with a drill, which his mates below him twirl with a strap they hold at either end, so that it spins continuously. In much the same way we handled our pole with its red-hot point, and twisted it in his eye till the blood boiled up around the burning wood. The scorching heat singed his lids and brow all round, while his eyeball blazed, and the very roots crackled in the flame. The Cyclops' eye hissed round the olive stake, in the same way that an axe or adze hisses when a smith plunges it into cold water to quench and strengthen the iron. He gave a dreadful shriek, which echoed round the rocky walls, and we backed away from him in terror, while he pulled the stake from his eye, streaming with blood. Then he hurled it away from him with frenzied hands, and raised a great shout to the other Cyclopses, who lived in the neighbouring caves along the windy heights. Hearing his screams, they came up from every quarter, and gathering outside the cave asked him what the matter was. "What on earth is wrong with you, Polyphemus? Why must you disturb the peaceful night and spoil our sleep with all this shouting? Is a robber driving off your sheep, or is somebody trying by treachery or violence to kill you?" Out of the cave came mighty Polyphemus's voice in reply. Oh, my friends, it's nobody's treachery, not violence, that is doing me to death. Well then, came the immediate reply, if you are alone and nobody is assaulting you, you must be sick, and sickness comes from Almighty Zeus and cannot be helped. All you can do is to pray to your father, the Lord Poseidon. And off they went, while I laughed to myself at the way in which my cunning notion of a false name had taken them in. The Cyclops, still moaning in agonies of pain, groped about with his hands and pushed the rock away from the mouth of the cave. Then he sat himself down in the doorway and stretched out both arms, in the hope of catching us in the act of slipping out among the sheep. What a fool he must have thought me. Meanwhile, I was cajoling my brains for the best possible course, trying to hit on some way of saving my friends as well as myself. I thought up plan after plan, scheme after scheme. It was a matter of life or death. We were in mortal peril. This was the scheme that eventually seemed best. The rams of the flock were of good stock, thick-fleeced, fine, big animals in their coats of black wool. These I quietly lashed together with the plaited willow twigs, which the inhuman monster used for his bed. I took them in threes. The middle one was to carry one of my followers, with its fellows on either side to protect him. Each of my men thus had 3 rams to bear him, but for myself I chose a full-grown ram who was the pick of the whole flock, seizing him by the back. I curled myself under his shaggy belly and lay there upside down, with a firm grip on his wonderful fleece, and with patience in my heart. In this way, with sighs and groans, we waited for the blessed dawn. As soon as she arrived, fresh and rosy-fingered, the he-goats and the rams began to scramble out and make for the pastures, but the females, unmilked as they were, with udders full to bursting, stood bleating by the pens. Their master, though tortured and in terrible agony, passed his hands along the backs of all the animals as they stopped in front of him. But the idiot never noticed that my men were tied under the chests of his own woolly rams. The last of the flock to come up to the doorway was the big ram, burdened by his own fleece and by me, with my thoughts racing. As he felt him with his great hands, the great Polyphemus broke into speech. "Sweet ram," he said, "why are you the last of the flock to pass out of the cave like this? You have never before lagged behind the others, but always step so proudly out, and are the first of them to crop the lush shoots of the grass, first to make your way to the flowing stream, and first to want to return to the fold when evening falls. Yet today you are the last of all. You must be grieved for your master's eye, blinded by a wicked man and his accursed friends, when he had robbed me of my wits with wine. Nobody was his name, and I swear that he has not yet saved his skin. Ah, if only you could feel as I do and find a voice to tell me where he's hiding from my fury. I'd hammer him and splash his brains all over the floor of the cave, and my heart would find some relief from the suffering which that nothing, that nobody has caused me." So he let the ram pass through the entrance, and when we had put a little distance between ourselves and the courtyard of the cave, I first let go my ram and then untied my men. Then, quickly, though with many a backward look, we drove our long striding sheep and goats, a rich fat flock, right down to the ship. My dear companions were overjoyed when they caught sight of us survivors, but broke into loud lamentations for the others. With nods and frowns I indicated silently that they should stop their weeping and hurry to bundle the fleecy sheep and goats on board and put to sea. So they went on board at once, took their places at the oars, and all together struck the white water with the blades. But before we were out of earshot, I shouted out derisive words at Polyphemus. Cyclops! So he was not such a weakling after all, the man whose friends you meant to overpower and eat in your hollow cave. And your crimes were bound to catch up with you, you brute, who did not shrink from devouring your guests. Now Zeus and all the other gods have paid you out. My words so enraged the Cyclops that he tore the top of a great pinnacle of rock and hurled it at us. The rock fell just ahead of our blue-painted bows. As it plunged in, the water surged, and the backwash, like a swell from the open sea, swept us landward and nearly drove us onto the beach. Seizing a long pole, I pushed the ship off at the same time, commanding my crew with urgent nods to bend their oars, to save us from disaster. They leant forward and rowed with a will, but when they had taken us across the water to twice our previous distance, I was about to shout something else to the Cyclops. But from all parts of the ship, my men called out, trying to restrain and pacify me. Why do you want to provoke the savage in this obstinate way? The rock he threw into the sea just now drove the ship back to the land, and we thought it was all up with us. Had he heard a cry, or so much as a word, from a single man, he'd have smashed in our heads, and the ship's timbers with another jagged boulder from his hand. We're within easy range for him. But my temper was up, and their words did not dissuade me, and in my rage I shouted back at him once more. Cyclops, if ever anyone asks you how you came by your blindness, tell him your eye was put out by Odysseus, sacker of cities, the son of Laertes, who lives in Ithaca. The Cyclops gave a groan. Alas, he cried, those ancient prophecies have come back to me now. We had a prophet living with us once, a great and mighty man, Eurymus' son, Telemus, the best of soothsayers, who grew old as a seer among us Cyclopses. All that has now happened he foretold, when he warned me that a man called Odysseus would rob me of my sight. But I always expected some big, handsome man of tremendous strength to come along, and now a puny, feeble, good-for-nothing fuddles me with wine and then puts out my eye. But come here, Odysseus, so that I can give you some friendly gifts, and prevail on the great earth-shaker, Poseidon, to see you safely home, for I am his son, and he is proud to call himself my father. My father's going to hear of this. He is the one who will heal me, if he's willing, a thing no other blessed god nor any man on earth could do. To which I shouted in reply, I only wish I could make as sure of robbing you of life and breath and sending you to hell, as I am certain that not even the earth-shaker will ever heal your eye. At this the Cyclops lifted up his hands to the starry heavens and prayed to the Lord Poseidon. Hear me, Poseidon, sustainer of the earth, god of the sable locks. If I am yours indeed and you claim me as your son, grant that Odysseus, sacker of cities and son of Laertes, may never reach his home in Ithaca. But if he is destined to see his friends again, to come once more to his own house and reach his native land, let him come late, in wretched plight, having lost all his comrades in a foreign ship, and let him find trouble in his home. So Polyphemus prayed, and the god of the sable locks heard his prayer. Once again the Cyclops picked up a boulder, bigger by far this time, and hurled it with a swing, putting such tremendous force into his throw that the rock fell only just astern of our blue-painted ship, narrowly missing the tip of the rudder. The water heaved up as it plunged into the sea, but the wave that it raised carried us onward toward further shore. And so we reached our island, where the rest of the good ships were waiting for us, their crews sitting round disconsolate and keeping a constant watch for our return. Once there, we beached our ship, jumped out on the shore, and unloaded the Cyclops flocks from the hold. We then divided our spoils so that no one, as far as I could help it, should go short of his proper share. But my comrades in arms did me the special honour, when the sheep and the goats were distributed, of presenting me with the big ram in addition. Him I sacrificed on the beach, burning slices from his thighs as an offering to Zeus of the black clouds, the son of Cronus, who is lord of us all. But Zeus took no notice of my sacrifice. His mind must already have been full of plans for the destruction of all my fine ships and of my loyal band. So the whole day long, till sundown, we sat and feasted on our rich supply of meat and mellow wine. When the sun set and darkness fell, we lay down to sleep on the seashore. As soon as dawn appeared, fresh and rosy-fingered, I roused my men and ordered them to go on board and cast off. They climbed on board at once, took their places at the oars, and all together struck the white surf with the blades. Thus we left the island and sailed on with heavy hearts, grieving for the dear friends we had lost, but glad at our own escape from death.